Just kind of the more I've dived into our food system and learned things, the more I've been like, what is happening? Because they package, for example, most meat in the store, especially beef, it's like a bright red color. And that's because they package it with modified atmospheric packaging, which is carbon monoxide mixed with a few other gases, and they package it. And that makes it that bright red color so that it looks fresh, even though it's actually not. The crazy thing is, though, that they can take American beef and they can either mix it with like imported beef from like Australia or Brazil or whatever, because our beef is super fat. And then they can bring in beef from other countries that's like super lean. And then they can get that like 90-10 blend. And so it's like, you don't even know what country your beef is coming from. 15% of the weight of the chicken can come from this water bath, this bleach. And then they can also sell that. It's not necessarily removed after they're soaked in the bleach.
That's disgusting and terrifying. Wow. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Patchwork Podcast. So today I'm interviewing Chloe from Parker Pastures, and she has the coolest story. I feel like I've learned so much from getting to talk to her. She took over her parents' business when her mom was diagnosed with cancer, and she has turned this company into a beautiful legacy for her mother, who has since gone to heaven. And it was just so refreshing talking with someone that not only cares about the animals that they are harvesting, but also the consumers, because more often than not, I'm going through the grocery store and I feel like I have looked so much into all of this, and I go through and I feel like I cannot trust anything I'm seeing anymore. I see free range, I see grass-fed, I see cage-free, and I genuinely think it is all a lie. I was even talking about during this interview that I watched the documentary Seaspiracy, and it was basically about the fish farming industry, and it's the most disgusting thing in the world. They're putting dyes in our fish, the way they're treating the fish, the labels that they're putting on our fish, convincing us that they're doing everything properly and it's safe to eat. There's basically no way to regulate it, no way to know if they're telling the truth. It's all mind-blowing, and I think what this whole interview will make you want to do is support local farms, support companies like Parker Pastures, support people that actually care about what goes into our bodies and how they treat the animals that we are going to eat, which is so important to me because I love animals and I also love good food. And it's just really frustrating overall as an American to be consuming food that is actively poisoning our bodies. We're paying incredibly high prices for food that is not even good for us. Then we get sent to the doctors that are just charging us an arm and a leg. And then they're telling us to go on medications to help with our health problems. And each of those medications cause more issues for our bodies. And we're paying hundreds of dollars a month to continue to stay on these medications that are also running our bodies. And it's just this endless, horrible cycle. And I think a lot of it begins with the food we're eating. So please enjoy this interview with Chloe from Parker Pastures. Hi, everybody. So this is Chloe with Parker Pastures. And today she's just going to give us a little bit of a rundown of what her business is, what she does, and why it's very different from the types of things that you're seeing in the grocery store and the mass-produced types of meats that we are getting on a daily basis.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited for this conversation. All of us eat food at least 3 times a day, maybe more or less, and what we eat directly impacts our health. Like, I've heard statistics of like 90% of diseases in America are related to food, and like there's just a lot of darkness in our food and what we're eating. And so I just really hope this conversation kind of just brings some light and some new insights, but also like some here's a better way, because like if you don't know or you're not sure where to go, it can feel super overwhelming. And I've grown up in agriculture my entire life, and that's always something that I've been like exposed to, both the good side and the bad side. So my parents started Parker Pastures when I was super little, so I've kind of always just grown up around cows and also eating beef, and always known that like there's anything I'm going to do in this world, it is to be ranching and in agriculture. And just kind of growing up, and then after high school I was like, okay, I just want to get out of my small hometown and go other places, kind of gain other experience. And so I did. I was working in Wyoming and Oklahoma on some different ranches. And then I got a phone call that my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and immediately like packed a few things up and came back because I didn't know what else to do. And I just immediately kind of just stepped into the role of helping my family because that just felt like the right thing to do. And as my mom was just like going through this battle with cancer, and I was just starting to learn more about our food system, our medical system, all of these things kind of started to like unravel things I've always heard or been like, that doesn't seem right. And then just like in that evolution of those kind of that like next year, it just got really placed heavily on my heart that I needed to continue doing this. Like I needed to continue providing families with nutrient dense food. Like, yes, I love horses and cows and moving cattle across landscapes and all of that, but the end result of that is stewarding the land well, so there's abundant land, and so that we all get to eat meat, because beef is one of the most nutrient dense foods on the planet. But there's a lot of like just darkness and things in meat that I was like, okay, I don't want to participate in that system. And so right before I turned 20, I took over Parker Pastures because I was like, I've always had a freezer full of meat that I felt good about, and I want to make sure other people have that opportunity as well. And then a few months later, my mom went to heaven, and so it was just this massive, like, life-altering transition, so hard, so much grief, and it just became even more important to me to carry on Parker Pastures because it was my mom's legacy, and she was always like, okay, there was always good, clean food in our house. And she also had the highest standards of like, no, there wasn't antibiotics. No, we were going to take care of the land well. And we're not going to strip the land. We're not going to fill it with chemicals. And just her standards are the same things that I uphold today with Parker Pastures, of like, no antibiotics, no hormones, no, we're not spraying a bunch of chemicals on our land. We're stewarding the land well. We want it to be abundant, because if the land is abundant and we take care of it, it's going to take care of us. And so, yeah, that was just kind of how Parker Pastures came to be. And the last few years, and just kind of the more I've dived into our food system and learned things, the more I've been like, what is happening? Because like they package, for example, most meat in the store, especially beef, it's like a bright red color, and that's because they package it with modified atmospheric packaging, which is carbon monoxide mixed with a few other gases, and they package it, and that makes it that bright red color so that it looks fresh, even though it's actually not. And there's just like stuff like that where I'm like, what is happening? And so I just want to be a place where people can find clean meat, because we all can't raise it ourselves. And then it's like, well, okay, where do I go? Because I don't know. It's like overwhelming trying to figure out the best option.
Absolutely. It's first of all, thank you so much for sharing so much of your story. I was reading through your website this morning. I'm so sorry to hear about how your mom passed away, but it's such a beautiful thing that you've done in continuing her legacy and making such an amazing business and continuing that business that they started. So it's so amazing. This is something that I care about so much. My family in particular, we have done so much research on the food industry. I got super interested in dairy farming for a little bit and went into that route, which was like actually the most disgusting, mind-blowing thing I ever looked into. And I'm just now kind of getting into really looking into the beef and chicken and what they're doing to our eggs. And it's crazy because even when I'm shopping at places like Whole Foods and thinking that I'm getting healthy food, a lot of the time it seems to be that, which I don't know if you have more insight on this. I read something at one point that said a lot of the times they are actually just putting different labels on meat that is bought from like the same farms and the same companies. Is that true?
Yeah, I've definitely seen some things about that. They can get away with a lot of things with labeling. Just for example, the grass-fed label, there's no regulations around that. And so like pretty much anyone can slap that grass-fed label on a package of beef if the animal spent like some point of their life eating grass. And then it's like, how do you define grass? And so there's just like a lot of things, and there's just so many loopholes where I've kind of just started to be like, okay, I don't really believe in labels because I know there's so many loopholes. And it's like, what does the meat actually taste like? Does it actually have flavor? Because beef should actually like have flavor. You shouldn't have to spice it up a bunch. Like there should be flavor. And like, what's the color of it? Like I was saying earlier, it's like bright red color versus like ours is more like a dark, kind of like a dark ruby color. And that's just because there's actual nutrients in it. Like if it tastes like there's flavor, there's also probably nutrients. And I mean, I am starting to go more and more down these rabbit holes because it's like there's so much just destruction in our food, and then we're all consuming that. And I don't know, like the thing that I've come back to again and again is like, can you shake the hand that is growing your food? Like, do you know the story behind it? Because it's really hard when it's just based off of labels.
Yeah, I'm very interested in that too because a while ago I started looking into the fishing industry. This was like 4 years ago. And I remember there was a documentary, I don't know if you've ever seen it on Netflix, it's called Seaspiracy. But they basically go into how horrible farm fishing is. And they talk about there's a certain label that will go on a lot of the fish that basically means nothing, but it used to make me feel safe as a consumer. But it like basically there's no way to regulate if they're telling the truth with putting this label on. And I have a pretty good feeling it would be quite similar with beef and chicken. So I wanted to ask, as we get into this, can you explain the process of how the vast majority of American farmers are obtaining cow and chicken meat versus the difference in how you guys are obtaining it, like just the ethics behind a lot of that?
Yeah, when I go about like saying this, I want to be like very careful because it's never the farmers and ranchers issue. And like everyone that I know who's in agriculture are amazing people, and they care about their land and their animals. We're just in this system that is incredibly corrupt. And it kind of started it started after the World Wars, and they figured out that they could use the same war chemicals on our land, and that would grow massive amounts of food, which then we grew massive amounts of grain. And then it was like, okay, well, what are we going to do with all of this grain? Started feeding it to cattle, which then created the current model we have, which about 90% of cattle go through this model, which kind of this process is a baby calf is going to be born on a ranch. Most of these are family ranches. That's the first, that first summer, it's with its mom. They're usually all out on grass grazing. Then come fall, like this kind of time of year, the calf is going to get weaned, and it will either stay on that ranch or it will be sold and go to somebody else. And then so kind of this time of year, so now we're in fall, going into winter. Sometimes that calf is like, they're feeding it a little bit of grain. Sometimes it's on pasture. It just kind of depends on where in the nation it is and that sort of thing. And then next summer, usually they'll be back out on pasture. And then next fall, they'll go into a feedlot, and they're going to spend, it really varies, but maybe like 180 days or just kind of depending on a lot of different variables. But that animal is going to be in a feedlot, and they're going to be fed corn. I mean, other things, but mostly corn, because that corn is high carbs. So it's super easy to put on a lot of weight really fast, but cattle aren't naturally designed to eat that. So it's going to completely screw up the omega-3, omega-6 ratio, making that omega-6 ratio like up to like 15 to 20 to 1, which is super imbalanced. It should be more like 1 to 1, which creates a ton of inflammation. And then we're eating that and we're pretty much just eating to create inflammation in our bodies. And then because the animals are not designed to eat corn, like cattle are designed to eat grass, sometimes they are given like antibiotics to keep them essentially healthy while they're eating an unnatural diet. Sometimes they do like implants for growth hormones to just make them grow faster. And then depending on like when that animal is like fat enough, it'll be butchered, and then it will be, just sold across the nation. The crazy thing is, though, that they can take like American beef and they can either mix it in mix it with like imported beef from like Australia or Brazil or whatever, because our beef is super fat. And then they can bring in beef from other countries that's like super lean. And then they can get that like 90-10 blend. And so it's like, you don't even know what country your beef is coming from. We can also import beef. America imports a decent amount of beef. And as long as it's processed in the United States, it can be labeled product of the US. And so there's just like so many unknowns. You don't know where that cattle came, right, like where that cow came from, how it was raised, if it was even American beef. And so there's just a lot of unknowns. And I will say, like, if we're choosing food in a grocery store, beef is going to be a better option than processed food. Even if it's finished in a feedlot on corn, like it's still going to be better, but it's not going to have the same health benefits as the kind of other side of that coin, which is going to be something that is grass-fed, grass-finished. Cattle spend their entire life on pasture. And so like that's the kind of beef we provide at Parker Pastures, where it's like, okay, these cattle are not fed corn. They're not going into confinement at the end of their life. They are literally eating grass and clovers and forbs and all of these different species throughout their entire life. And then when they're like fully finished, super fat, then they're harvested, and then we send boxes of meat directly to people's houses. And I can say all of that, and it's like, yeah, I have pictures and all the things, but it's like when you taste the meat, you're gonna see that there's actually truth to that, because you're going to notice it's going to have a lot of flavor. Like I rarely spice up my meat just because it has flavor, versus if I try beef somewhere else where it's like grain finished, it just doesn't have that flavor. Because it's like, if you were to eat the same thing every single day, it kind of gets boring. And that's like same with the cows, and then that translates into their meat. If you're like looking to find an alternative of like, okay, where do I get good clean beef? I mean, sometimes you can find it at the grocery store if you're really looking at labels and it does say grass-fed and grass-finished, and like that's kind of a little bit of hit or miss. But the best option is to find a place where you can just buy it. There's a lot of different options, kind of depending on what you like. But Parker Pastures, we have subscription boxes, or you can buy like quarter, half, or whole cow, which is the rancher's secret to the best way to buy meat, just because you get all the cuts for the same price and you lock in that price per pound and don't have to worry about beef prices rising, because they currently are. And so yeah, that's kind of how most beef are raised. And then what is ideal is grass-fed, grass-finished. But the other thing is those animals grazing a diversity of species. Because something really cool that I find about beef, and it also translates into milk and even other proteins, is whatever the animals are grazing, those plants have different, they call them phytochemicals, but they're like phytonutrients. So nutrients in these grasses. And then these animals, like if a cow grazes a bunch of different grasses, she's going to ingest that. And that's going to be converted into our milk or meat. And those nutrients are going to be in our milk or her meat, which creates like a super nutrient dense food. And beef is like 90% bioavailable. So what that means is your body can absorb up to 90% of those nutrients, versus like spinach, for example, I think is like a 20%. And so it's like way lower.
That's what I was just about to ask you. I was actually just going to pull that back up on your website. Okay, we have fruits and vegetables lost more than 50% of their nutritional value. Is that's accurate? 50%? And what's like, do you know the time span that's happened in?
I think that's like it's either the last 50 or 100 years. And that's mostly due to the soil. Like that is like it's like, yeah, we need plants healthy, but that's all starts in the soil. And because most soil has been heavily tilled, sprayed with chemicals, there's not the vitamins, the minerals in soil that there used to be, which then goes into the vegetables or the grass, which the cow eats. And so that's why our food is super nutrient depleted.
Okay, I wanted to ask, so a lot of times at the stores, if I'm going in and I'm seeing something that says grass-fed, likely it's not really been grass-fed its whole life, like they're trying to advertise. With you guys, if you are putting that grass-fed label on, are your animals truly fed just grass their whole lives? Are they grain finished? How do you guys operate?
Yep, everything is grass-fed, grass-finished, pasture-raised. There's like a bajillion different like labels. But yeah, the cattle just spend their entire life on pasture the way God designed. They're just eating all of these different grasses. Like I said, you'll taste the difference. And I think that's super important. I like to compare like a tomato that you get from the store versus like a farmer's market, like an heirloom tomato, where it's like the store-bought. Every time I've had a store-bought tomato, it kind of just tastes like cardboard and there's no flavor. And then if I get one from the farmer's market or something, it's gonna bursting with flavor. Like you can almost eat it like an apple because it's so much flavor. And that's a very distinct difference between majority of beef and Parker Pastures, is that flavor difference, because it is truly grass-fed and grass-finished. Like they're just lifetime graze. They're just eating grass. They're not getting corn. They're not getting grain. They're not getting an unnatural diet. And so then we're ingesting that, and it's like the way that it was designed for us to eat it. Even our omega ratio is like, it's like 1-to-1 or 1.2-to-1. So it's like exactly where it needs to be. So there's not that inflammation in the cattle or in us.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing that you guys do that. I feel like that's so rare to find people that actually advertise as grass-fed and actually only feed their animals grass. It's also another big thing for me, seeing how the huge meat production industry treats their animals as they kind of go throughout this process. It's so sad. I love animals so much and care about animals so much. I also, understand that a lot of them are intended for us to eat, but I still think that we should be treating them humanely throughout their lives.
Yes.
And I'll kind of get into this more with the chicken stuff because I've looked into this a little bit more with the chickens. And I had a video that I wanted to get your thoughts on because it's actually horrible. I've never seen like, it's gross and really sad that chickens are treated this way. So I wanted to ask, before we jump into the chickens, what's the most shocking thing you've learned about American meat production as you've been in this industry for so long?
That's a good question.
You've probably just seen some crazy things, especially because, so you said before you went back to work for your family, did you work for a large like meat production place or like a large farm, or was it more of a family owned type of thing?
Everything I've done is like family owned, but definitely kind of diversified into just experiencing other things. To make a living, it's easier to compete or to be in the system than to be outside of it. And so I'm always like, it's not the farmer or rancher's problem. It's like, we have a very broken system problem. But I think the thing that constantly shocks me is just the corruption, or just where it's like, whatever happened to just caring about like the health of the land and people and animals. And yeah, I think that's the thing where it's like constantly just shocked by that.
It seems to be at this point, all they care about is money, and there's no care for, just the average person's health. I mean, looking at America versus other countries, we were recently in Europe, and I mean, like, we were eating pizza and bread and just all kinds of stuff, but our stomachs never hurt. And I come back to the US, and all we really eat, me and my husband, is meat, fruit, and veggies mainly, unless we're like going to restaurants. And instantly we come back and we're eating meat, fruit, and veggies, and our stomachs are already bloated and hurting so bad. And in my head, I'm just like, we're doing everything right, and it's still not working. And that's such a huge problem I have with America right now with our food industries. You can do everything right, and it's still not going to make this huge difference when you're buying from grocery stores, because they're poisoning us at the end of the day. I mean, it goes back again, like you're saying, a lot of the stuff they're putting in our soil and in our foods, it's horrible. So I wanted to share this video with you and get your thoughts.
Electric stunning begins with the chickens arriving at the slaughterhouse, packed in transport crates. Workers then shackle chickens by their legs upside down onto an overhead conveyor. Shackling is painful and stressful for the birds. Chickens' hips can be dislocated and their legs broken as they are shoved into the shackles, and their wings can be injured as they flap in distress. The conveyor then carries the chickens towards a shallow water bath that has been electrified. As their heads are dragged through the water, they are electrocuted and rendered unconscious. The conveyor then moves the unconscious chickens to an automatic cutter, which slits their throats. The chickens bleed to death while shackled on the conveyor. Finally, their bodies are immersed into a tank of scalding water to loosen their feathers. The carcasses then go on to be fully processed to become meat.
First of all, so sorry, because I know that was so dark. I was watching that video. It made me really sad the other day because I had no idea that that's kind of the process of things that go on at a lot of these large meat production facilities. So I wanted to ask just kind of what your thoughts and response to this video is, kind of knowing if and do you feel like that's accurate to your knowledge of kind of what that looks like in larger scale facilities?
So I watched the video beforehand, then was just kind of thinking about it. And when I was little, we raised pasture-raised chickens. I've definitely processed a lot of chickens in my life and prefer to never do that again. But anyways, it was like very small scale. It was interesting because we would kind of do not like that kind of method, but where the animals would go upside down. And chickens, when they do that, it doesn't stress them out because all of their blood drains to their head and it kind of mellows them out. And like I just remember growing up like watching that, and because you would just take the chicken out of the pasture and then they would go and we'd hang them upside down when we were going to harvest them, and they would not be stressed and they would not be flapping around and they would be like very calm. And then to be fully transparent, I have not done enough like research in the chicken industry of like to know how most chickens are harvested, but I mean that the electrocution and stuff, probably, parts of that are accurate, but a lot of, from my experience, it's either with, and I know this sounds really brutal and really intense, but I think it's important to talk about how animals are harvested, because at the end of the day, we're eating these animals. And this is something I've wrestled with. Like, there was a period in my life where I was vegetarian because I was like, the killing of animals is not an easy thing. Like, it's a heavy subject. I think it's like something that we don't talk about enough, and it does matter. The thing that I'm constantly reminded of whether it's like cattle that are going to the butcher or like harvesting an elk for meat or whatever it is, like death is a natural part of the cycle of life. And the thing that's I've always come back to is what was the life those animals lived? Because those chickens in that video, they probably were 6 to 8 weeks old, grown as fast as they possibly could, in confinement, tight confinement, their entire lives, and then they were harvested that way. That doesn't sit right with me. And it's like, okay, there is going to be a process where there has to be a form of harvesting. I am all about doing it. How do we do that the most humane way? But it is death. You can't undo that part of it. How do we give these animals the best life possible and the most humane death? Like in that video, the angle is definitely very brutal, which I get because it's massive production harvesting chickens. Like, it's not great, but also just kind of leaning on my own experience and then also doing some further like research of this. Okay, when that chicken is upside down, it actually does not stress it out. And then the whatever water bath thing, that I don't know as much about, and that looks a little worse. But a lot of the times it's either like, if it's an on-farm chicken harvest, it's usually like the cutting of the throat, which is a very fast, instant death. And that's what we want. We want the most instant, no pain. There's also a form called stunting. Same thing, it's fast, instant. Once that animal is no longer alive, the process after that, yes, it matters for how we're consuming it and I want it done well, but like that doesn't matter because that animal's no longer in pain. And like why they soak them in water is that loosens up the feathers so they can remove all the feathers, because I don't think any of us want to eat feathers when we're eating chicken. And so whenever I think about harvesting of animals, it's like, hey, what was the life they lived beforehand? Did they actually live a good life? With their death, was it humane and instant? Because if it's like not instant, that creates a bunch of stress in the animal, which then releases cortisol in the meat. And like for beef, that can make it super tough. That's not okay for the animals. We want something that's instant and humane as possible.
That makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot more sense kind of hearing you explain all of that rather than just watching the video, because I watched that and I'm like, dear Lord, I don't know if I could ever eat a chicken again. And it's just so sad thinking about all of that. So do you guys still raise chickens?
No, I've learned that I can't do everything well, so I work with the best of the best who do it. So we do have a farm that I work with, and they do pasture raised chicken, and It's amazing how they do it. Birds are on pasture. They're moved every day, kind of just in like these big, I guess you call them like a chicken tractor, but it's like kind of a big dome, I guess would be kind of a way to explain it. And they're moved every day. They're not like crammed in there. Like they have space and they're able to eat the bugs and just the grass, and then moved every day. And then they have an on-farm processing plant, which is huge. So the animals are not, the chickens are not transported hundreds of miles, harvested all on farm, and then they're not soaked in bleach like most chicken is, because chicken is kind of, especially conventional chickens, like dirty, and so they have to clean it some way, and a lot of chicken is soaked in bleach. And so these ones aren't, and it's packaged right there and then frozen. And I personally am not a big chicken person because I just prefer beef, but the flavor of the chicken it's very there. And also knowing how the chicken is raised, I feel comfortable eating it because most chicken, like 99% of chicken are raised in confinement in tiny little, well, they're massive buildings with tons of chickens in them. It's not natural, and it's just kind of, yeah, honestly, how most chicken is raised. And pigs is even worse, is really gross. And so, yeah, this is pasture raised on pasture. And like chickens, like they want to eat the bugs and they want that diverse diet. And so this is also like, okay, how was it intended? And is this exactly it?
This might be a totally dumb question, but I did not know the thing about the bleach. So when they bleach, are they basically, you're getting to the point of just a raw chicken meat? Because I'm thinking bleach, like the bleach I put on my clothes. Is that what in my head? And then how do they get that? Are they able to get most of it out of the chicken, or are we consuming a lot of the bleach?
It's in the form of a water bath, and so there's just bleach. Yeah, it's probably just like normal bleach, maybe a little bit different. But yeah, they're soaked in a water bath. And the crazy part is 15% of the weight of the chicken can come from this water bath, this bleach. And then they can also sell that. It's not necessarily removed after they're soaked in the bleach.
That's disgusting and terrifying. Wow. So the other thing I wanted to ask, so I wanted to read some of the free range guidelines, because this is another thing. For a long time I would look for free range eggs, free range chicken, and I always just thought, if it says free range, it's all good to go. And now I'm learning that that's a lie as well. So this is kind of what it's saying is the definition. So for free range guidelines, particularly those set by the USDA, primarily focus on providing poultry with outdoor access, ensuring they have continuous access to an outdoor space for more than 51% of their lives. However, these regulations don't specify the quality, size, or type of outdoor space, meaning a small enclosed area could technically meet the definition. With the company that you partner with, are their chickens considered free range? How much access to the outdoors do they get, and how much space are they getting?
Yeah, because there is, I think, I'm trying to remember all the different terms, because there's like free range, cage free, pasture raised, there might be a few more, but the free range, the cage free pretty much doesn't mean anything. Pasture raised is the most kind of legit, but there's also loopholes. Chickens with Parker Pastures, they are actually on pasture, and like I said, moved every day. I don't know what their like space, like chicken to space ratio is, but like I've been down there and they're not like all shoved in a little area. They have plenty of room to roam. It's not like they're in confinement and then they're on pasture for a few days. It's like, no, they're just on pasture. And then more importantly, being moved to fresh pasture, because chickens are just, I don't want to say dirty animals, but they're different animals than a cow. Their poop is actually super nutrient dense. It's filled with a lot of nitrogen, which is really good, can be really good for the soil, but they need to be moved often. And also chickens, like everybody wants to eat chickens. It doesn't matter if we're talking humans or hawks or coyotes. And so they have to be in an area that is safe where they're not going to get eaten. And that's why this kind of method of an enclosed area, like it's kind of like the shape of a tunnel, but that can be moved and they can have access and there is sunlight shining down, is the best of both worlds versus like that free range label you just read, the definition of that, or cage free. It's pretty much just to put the label on so that you pay more, but it doesn't actually mean anything. It's kind of similar to the grass-fed label, where it's like the regulation kind of sort of that's very vague. 50% or like some part of the animal's life was on grass. And it's like, okay, what about the rest of their life?
Right. Because I wanted to ask as well, so this is saying an outdoor space for more than 51% of their lives. Are for y'all's chickens, is it 50? Are y'all doing the 51% thing, or are y'all 90% of their lives? Because it's the dome thing you're describing. It's kind of like an outdoor-indoor situation.
It's all outdoor. It's like I'm trying to think of a greenhouse shape that is mobile. When they are babies, they are in a barn. Those first few days, like they're just hatched and like kind of gotta just take care of them. But as soon as they're old enough, they go directly on pasture and spend the rest of their life on pasture. These are all good questions, but it's more than the 50%. And also in the barns, like it's not this gross contamination, high volume, and they do it for only the minimum they need to make sure the animals, just make sure, because going from onto pasture when you're a little tiny baby chick, you gotta have some strength and be ready to do that. It's like sending a baby out, like just out in the open right away. Like you need a little bit of time to make sure that animal is ready for that. But as soon as they're able, I want to say it's like 1 or 2 weeks. It's really fast. Then they're on pasture. Then they have that access to all of those grasses and stuff versus like, I think a lot of like free range stuff. This tiny dirt patch that they're on, and that's called free range. It's like, not really.
Right. That's where the point I've gotten to, where the more I look into it, I've always kind of been in the mindset of, oh, if I go to Whole Foods or if I go to Sprouts, my food's gonna be better. And here I am paying $200 more for my groceries, and I'm probably getting the same crap I could have gotten at Kroger, which is also really disappointing and makes me want to shop at like local owned stores more, or Parker Pastures, different places like that actually care about their animals and the people consuming them. So kind of as we get to the end of this, I wanted to ask, what's the main thing you would warn Americans about when shopping at the grocery store for chicken or for beef, just at meat in general? What's the thing that you would say is like most important for us to keep in mind when shopping for meat?
First, I want to encourage everyone to think of food as an investment for your health, not a cost to your week, because good food, good high quality food does cost more, and it's a broken system that is true, but it is. Yeah, so then just starting with that mindset, this is an investment for my health, the health of my family, and what I eat and what I eats matters. If you are going to the grocery store, honestly, I would not get chicken from the grocery store unless you know that it is pasture raised and it doesn't have these gigantic chicken breasts. It's like not usual to have huge, gigantic breasts. Like that is not a healthy bird. If you are buying meat from the store, the cleanest option is going to be a ruminant animal. So bison, beef, lamb, because those animals are kind of able to filter through some of the toxins versus chicken and pork. I've been doing some research, and like pork has the highest parasites of any meat. Chicken and pork, because they're not ruminant animals and then they are in these high confinements, it's not the best option. Sometimes chicken is cheaper, but that does not mean it's better. If you are going to a store, just be like very careful and mindful. But I would encourage you not to. Instead, it's going to be a lot better perfect situation is like find a local farmer near you, go to the farmer's market, get a big chest freezer, buy half or whole cow, have a year's worth of meat. That's like optimal situation. That can also be hard and take a lot of research. So if you do want a source and just like know it's good and clean, you can actually taste the difference. Like you can go on Parker Pastures.com to order if you want to. I will tell you and be fully transparent that the cost of meat, along with a lot of other foods, but mostly beef, is rising because it's the highest prices for cattle literally ever seen, and that is because we have the least amount of cattle in this nation that we've ever had since 1960s, but we have a super high demand. And then corn, which most cattle are fed, is super cheap to feed right now. So it's kind of this perfect storm. And that unfortunately does affect the price of beef. And so I kind of want to share a quick hack of like just save money, which is to buy a quarter, half, or whole cow. And so what that does, I know that's like big investment, and also it's just like, it's different than going to the store each week. And so what happens when you're getting a quarter, a half, or whole cow is you get all of the different cuts. You get the steaks, the roast, the ground beef, all for the same price. And then usually kind of rough estimates, like a quarter cow will last a couple or an individual for like 6 months to a year. Half cow is great for like a family of like 4 to 6, usually lasts 8 months to a year. And then whole cow is great. It's always going to be the best price per pound. So it's great if you want to like split it with neighbors or family, or if you just want to have a lot of beef on hand or eat a lot of beef like I do. And so you lock in that price per pound today, which who knows what it'll be in the future. And then all you have to do is open your freezer and you have all of this meat. Don't have to go to the store. Don't have to worry about what's in it because of where you're getting it from. And there's just like that peace of mind of just being like, hey, I'm just gonna go to the freezer. We're gonna have tacos tonight, and I'm gonna get some ground beef. And so that's just like a great way. Also, as you're just like thinking about other foods of like, okay, maybe you're gonna buy a bunch of chicken in stock, or maybe you're gonna get some, like I'm gonna do this in a few weeks, like get a bunch of potatoes from the farmer's market and store them in a place that they stay good over the winter, and then I just have potatoes. I don't have to worry about going to the store and knowing what's in them. If there ever was a time to know who's raising your food and to either grow some yourself or go to your local farmer's market, like now is the time, because you can ask the questions, you can go visit the place, and usually that's going to be the most nutrient dense option and also the safest option. Go to the farmer's market, kind of check it out, see where local farmers are in your area. Yeah, it's just like a great option. And it's also like just the peace of mind and knowing that it's actually good food. I know it's a different mindset, sometimes can take a little bit more time, but with the flavor of the food and just the health, it's way worth the investment and the time.
Absolutely. No, that makes so much sense. I used to go to the farmer's market a lot more than I do now, and I feel like it is one of those things where you start to be like, oh, it takes too much time, but it really feels worth it when you think about how your health is at risk. And it's definitely interesting as well how you were saying earlier, did you say 80 or 90% of diseases are caused by food in the US? Was that the stat?
Yeah.
It's really sad. I was talking to someone when we were in Europe about this, about how they were like, it's weird because America is the sickest country on earth, but also one of the wealthiest countries. And I was like, yeah, I mean, Americans are enraged about it. We're pissed that, we're paying incredibly high prices for our food when we go to the grocery store, and we're actively being poisoned, by the people that are claiming to be the organic, the free range, whatever that we're buying, and that we're being lied to as we purchase things. And it's really frustrating as consumers. So it's really refreshing to see people that actually care, like you guys, that care about the animals and about the consumer.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. I know both sides of the coin, and it's like at the end of the day, I just hope this encourages someone to either, go to your local farmer's market, or if you have questions and want to place an order with Parker Pastures, would be honored to serve. But yeah, our food system and medical system is very corrupt, but there is light, and there is people who are, I'm not the only one. There's a lot of other farmers and ranchers out there doing this way, where it's like, we want to care for the land, and we want the animals to be healthy and have a good life, and we want you to have clean meat that you can, or produce or whatever, that you can actually feel good about eating and is not going to poison you.
Right. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for answering all of these questions and being so open about what you guys do and how you care for your animals and the consumers. It's really been refreshing to hear. And also, I just feel like I've learned so much, and now I'm going to have to do a deep dive into the whole chicken bleach thing too. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure to go shop or check out at least Parker Pastures on their website, on their Instagram. I'll make sure to link everything below. I hope that if you took nothing else away from this, just to look more into what you are consuming, look at the labels, and shop locally, because that is the best way to really know what you are consuming and what's in your food. She said something interesting in the interview about being able to shake the hand of the person that is harvesting the food for you. That's an amazing thing to be able to do, and you can do that when you shop locally. So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and to follow us on Spotify and Instagram, and have a great day.